So you would have seen from recent videos that I was wondering whether or not to replace my polytunnel, which was a bit tattered and old, and it was one of those light frame structures. As you can see behind me, I've made the decision to take that away and start and make a brand new, not really a polytunnel anymore, more of a poly greenhouse. In this video I'm going to show you what I used and how I did it, and if you like the video then give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to the channel for future videos then please press the subscribe button.
Before going into the build, I just wanted to show you the polytunnel that I'm replacing. This is the lightweight structure that I've had now for about 6 or 7 years. It cost me between £70 and £80. It's a light frame structure and it served perfectly well. But as you can see, the door is ripped, the cover's a bit tatty, and now it's time to have it replaced. I'm sure many people watching this video will have similar types of polytunnels and they are okay as starter tunnels, but it's time to go.
So if you've made a decision that you want either a new polytunnel or a polystructure or a greenhouse, and you either want to replace an existing one or buy a new one, there's lots of choices on the market and they vary significantly in price. And your choice of what you're going to do is going to be determined by your location, the size of the polytunnel or the structure that you want, and ultimately cost, because you'll see if you do a bit of research that the cost varies significantly from a simple under £100 polytunnel like I showed you of my old one, very simple to put up, a lightweight frame, and under £100, right through to hundreds and even thousands of pounds. So what I've done, I've decided that I'm going to build my poly house, not a polytunnel, to give me more scope to grow taller vegetables, and also give me a larger area to grow in. But I want to do it, like most people, as cheaply as possible. So in this video you're going to see that I managed to do everything in my poly structure to get a 5 metres by 3.5 metre structure, 2.4 metres high, for £300, and that's including all of the materials that I had to buy, which was the timber and crucially the polythene, which I'll talk about later in the video. Now when I started I didn't really know exactly what I was going to build, so I decided that I needed to make a little sketch just to get it clear in my mind what I wanted to do. Remember, this is a design and build project. I'm not a builder, and it's something that I've decided that I was going to build as I go along, but I still wanted some form of an idea about what the structure would look like, the size, the difference or the centres between the various uprights and timbers. So as you can see, I sketched out this very simple drawing which took me about 10 minutes. I mean, I'm no architect by any means, but at least it gave me a plan and idea about what I wanted to do, because the danger is if you just start building without knowing really what you want to do, you could end up not getting what you want, and you could also hit some problems that you didn't envisage. I mean, you sort of do that anyway, and we deal with those as we go along, but just a simple sketch like this helps you to understand what you want in the first place.
Site preparation is really important because everything is going to be built from this point onwards. So after we got rid of the old structure and the frame, and because there's a gradient on my allotment from left to right, it was necessary for us to level the ground as best as possible in order to provide a reasonably level base for the beginning of the construction. As you can see, we've pinned out the perimeter of the frame and made it reasonably level, so that we're fairly confident we had the polytunnel in the right place and reasonably level to start with. So once everything was pinned out, you can see that the base frame was then installed. These are pallet timbers, 30mm thick, so they're decent pallet timbers which are connected together to form the overall base. It's important that this is square and level because the main frame is going to be constructed from this point onwards. So as you can see, it's all in place now and ready to receive the main frame.
Yesterday we got the main frame up, and it does take 2 people to build this because of the span, and obviously you need people to help and support when you're putting certain timbers in place. The first thing we did was clear the ground and build the box frame, where you can see the angles on the edges which will be taken off. They're just used to square the frame, and those are just old pallet timbers which we've connected together using connecting pieces, and as you can see they're just screwed in to connect the timbers, And those stakes that you can see are, I would guess, driven about 1.5 to 2 feet into the ground, which is about 18 to 24 inches, and screwed right down. So that really is going to anchor the frame right down. Also as well, I had these metal fence panels here that were on the allotment. We got these from the developer who was doing the housing development at the back a number of years ago, and they just left a good pile for all the allotment holders. So I was lucky enough to have 3 of these. They've got the proper legs that these panels fit into, and they're buried, I'd guess, around about 1.5 feet into the ground. So as you can see, the structure is fairly sturdy.
In order to start the construction of the main frame, the vertical uprights were screwed to the timber base frame right at the bottom to make them secure, and they were temporarily supported while the remainder of the structure was put in place.
So in order to make economical use of the timber we had available, the intermediate rails that you can see here going horizontally, they're pallet timbers. So we based the centres of the vertical uprights on the length of the pallet timbers, and that meant we didn't need to cut too many of the timbers, and that's worked really well. So we put the vertical timbers in place, and they are screwed at the bottom, and as you can see, when it comes to the detail at the top, we've got a steel angle bracket with some screws in there to support the main timber beam which is going across to the other side, and then we've packed some more horizontal members between the timbers, and that'll provide a nice edge when the plastic starts to go on, as you can see, all the way around. Also as well, to give because of the actual span of the roof, we've put intermediate timbers in between the timber struts as well for the roof, just to give it a bit more stability. We still have the door to construct. The frame is in. You can see there's a door head just above there, so we'll build a door that will go on there on hinges, and also we're going to put some diagonal bracing across the front and the back, just to give it a bit more stability when it's windy. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to paint all of the timbers in a preservative, and even though most of this is going to be covered by plastic, it just gives it that extra level of protection. One thing I would say is, if you are going to use preservative, make sure you use a water-based preservative, not a oil-based, only because the oil-based could potentially, particularly at lower levels, contaminate the ground that you might be growing on inside and around the perimeter. So the water preservative will fill the pores of the timber and just help to make it a little bit more waterproof. So as you can see, the main structure is now up. So today I'm thinking about what I need to do in order to secure the plastic, which I'll probably put on in the next couple of days. So the first thing I've been doing today is to reduce the levels on this one side over here. You'll notice that the bank is higher, so what I've done is reduced the levels. If I go and stand over here and come back, there you go, you can see it's quite a significant level drop, and this bank here is my neighbour's allotment. There's 2 ways of putting the plastic on. One is to actually dig a trench and put the polythene and bury it, and obviously secure it as well, and the other one is to batten fix it. I'm going to go for batten fixing, so what I'm going to be doing today is putting horizontal battens on the edges of the exterior of the polytunnel to secure the laths. Here's some of the roots I've had to take out from that trench. I've got to reduce this level as well here. This is the back of the polytunnel, and you can see the levels are quite high, but clearly I need to get access to secure battens, so I've got to dig a fair bit of this out to enable me to secure it, and I'll put a batten on the bottom. And then what I'm going to do today is, if you can see, I'm going to fix these type of horizontals here all the way along the sides, and that will help me give a fixing for the battens. So that's what's going to be happening today, and if I've got time as well, I'm going to put a bit of vertical bracing on as well, because that's sort of the last job apart from the door. I've just started putting the external horizontals on the outside frame, and these are going to be where the laths from the plastic are going to attach to. But because the top of them is a fairly straight, sharp edge, I've found this old water pipe that I used for some cloches which I broke up, and I've just put that on the top, just to, and it projects slightly, very slightly above the surface. So when the plastic is, I want to do this on the other side, when the plastic is rolled over, it just gives it a softer edge and reduces the risk of the plastic tearing.
So you learn as you go along. So rather than struggle to install the blue water pipe while I'm at the top of a ladder, holding on with my screwdriver in one hand, it made sense for the other side to install the water pipe on the horizontal timbers before I installed them onto the main frame. That's what I've done. The water pipe's important because the last thing you want to do is tear your plastic when you're installing it, because it's very expensive, and obviously it will weaken the overall integrity of the plastic if it gets damaged.
So you'll notice I've started adding diagonal bracing to the frame, and this is a really important part of the build because it stabilises the frame against wind. Now with a structure of this size and width, is any wind that hits the side, so when the plastic goes on the side, it's almost going to be like a sail. So when the wind comes from the right hand side, or from the left hand side indeed, it will blow right up against the frame and puts a lot of force on the frame, so you have to stabilise it. So what I did was put these diagonal braces in, which as you can see are screwed to the uprights and to the frame. So if I was to want to push the frame, there's no movement on it now, whereas before the bracing it was very, very flexible. You can see the bracing also on the back. I've just got one more brace to put on the front corner at the left hand side of the door, and that's pretty rigid. Something else I've completed yesterday, I put the horizontal battens, if I show you the difference on the other side, which are not done yet, which I'm going to do today, you can see that they're not currently there. Because clearly I need something to attach the plastic to, the laths for the plastic to, so I'm just going to put them on today, and that will complete the exterior of the frame ready for the plastic. And as you can see, it's done all the way along, top, middle and bottom. A really crucial part of the whole build is the choice of the polythene. Now, whatever you do, don't compromise on trying to get the cheapest possible polythene, because it has to be the right type of polythene. And I spent quite a while researching what type of polythene I needed, because if you get the wrong polythene, it might be cheaper, but it will become very brittle very quickly, and when you have heavy winds or adverse weather, it'll break down really, really quickly, so you'll end up replacing it anyway. I did some research and realised that I needed polythene that was going to be durable, UV protected and suitable for polytunnels or polyhouses. So in the end I got my polythene from a place called First Tunnels. Now I'm not affiliated to First Tunnels in any way, it's just these were the company that came up based upon the specification that I wanted. In the end I ordered 200 micron 800 gauge UV stabilised polythene. Now just remember, make a note of those characteristics. You can vary in terms of the amount of microns and the gauge depending on what you want, but that's what I got in the end. And that polythene has a 7-year guarantee. Not quite sure how the guarantee actually works, but it tells us that the supplier is confident that's a really good product. I was very pleased when the polythene was delivered within 2 days, and now that it's actually up, it's perfect for what I need. So whatever you do, do not compromise on the plastic. That's a really important thing to know. If you might need to pay a bit extra for it, but at least it's well worth doing. So for this structure I ordered and measured a sheet of polythene 11 meters by 11 meters, which allowed it to go front to back lengthwise and front to back widthwise as one sheet. It saved me having to cut separate sections out and just allowed the whole sheet to be installed as one piece, which is really important. And the way we did it was that when the sheet came, it was on a roll, but it was folded. So they folded it up and then rolled it. So over on the left hand side, we completely unrolled the sheet, but we didn't unfold it, we just unrolled it. And then we lifted it over the centre of the roof, still folded, but along its full length. and then pulled it either side to cover the whole polytunnel. And then we started on the rear and started to secure the polythene from the top. So this is where we started from. So the sheet was loose, obviously, when we first unrolled it. So we pulled it as tight as we could and secured it at the bottom by using large concrete blocks just to weigh it down, but being careful not to rip the plastic, just to give it a bit of weight. And we secured the first battens along the top row. You notice that these are screwed in and they're treated battens, so that I painted them first to give them a bit of weather protection. Then when that batten was on, we pulled the plastic tight and put the middle batten in all the way along, and eventually we pulled the plastic as tight as we could and rolled it, after we'd cut a little piece off, around the batten, pulled it tight and then screwed it to the base. I've partially covered this side here, and this other half will be covered up to the rail in soil, just to give it a bit of extra protection. And that's the way we did it. Then we pulled the plastic over the roof and did exactly the same to the other side. So here is the other side, and you can see the battens on the top, middle and bottom all rolled up. So once the two large sides were done, we worked on the back, pulled the excess polythene over and secured it horizontally again at the top to secure it close to the roof, and then to the horizontal batten here, and then to the bottom, which is now covered as I've completely reinstated the pathway. And on the edges where the cuts were, we rolled the plastic tight as we possibly could in the battens and screwed them on. That gave us a really nice tight finish. And then that just left the front. We did exactly the same way as the back, pulled the excess plastic over, secured the top rail, pulled it down, secured it as tight as we could in the middle, and then we did the same at the bottom. So that gets the initial plastic secured using top, middle and bottom horizontal rails. Next, to make sure that the plastic was as tight as possible, we added these vertical battens all the way along, and that made the plastic nice and tight. You do need to get the plastic as tight as you possibly can, because clearly it's going to have to withstand a lot of adverse weather, wind, rain, another hail maybe, and other types of weather. So really pleased with the plastic. And then built a door just out of a timber frame, and I use a staple gun to staple plastic on that. I have got spare plastic, so if the door needs replacing, it's fairly easy to do. Always be careful when you're installing it that you haven't got any sharp edges, and make sure that you don't rip it, because clearly you only get one chance to put the plastic on, and once you've made a cut, you know, there's no going back. I did have a roll of spare polythene tape, which I also purchased just in case there was any problems, but we didn't really have any. So I'm now inside the new polytunnel. I'm very pleased with the space. Still work to do, it's not completely finished yet, and as I've been building it, there's one or two things I'm not just quite happy with that I'm going to address over the next week or two. The roof is one of them. I think that I'm going to need to add more battens. The roof is reasonably secure because I've added battens to the actual top on the edges to secure the plastic down, but I want more support in between the timbers. As you can see, there's only one in between. You can just see behind me. I'm going to put additional battens either side of this central batten just to give it a bit of extra support. I'm also going to see how that works, and if I feel that the roof is not performing how it should, because I know a lot of people who build these types of things will talk about things like water ponding and stuff like that. If that starts to happen, I hope it won't, but if it does, I might consider adding polycarbonate sheeting on top, but I don't really want to do that just yet, just to see how it works. Also, the polytunnel is well braced. You can see there's lots of these diagonal timbers there, and the structure, particularly on the edges, is really strong and sturdy. However, because it's so long, where the central uprights are here and here, what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to put a large timber into the ground, hammer it into the ground opposite where the verticals are, and just brace diagonally upwards to those vertical timbers, because this side here is where my shelving is going to go. So it's not going to make any difference to have that bracing there. That's really a bit of a belt and braces job really. I don't know whether it's completely needed, but I'm going to do it anyway. The other thing as well which I need to do, and I've got a window frame, is put ventilation in. So I may add a cross rail just at the back there, just to put a window in, just to give it a bit of ventilation, because as you know, if you've got a polytunnel or a greenhouse, these get very hot in the summer. So as you can see, I've now got plenty of new space available inside my polyhouse. I've got to add, as I've already said, my shelving, give the ground a dig, but I'm going to be able to grow lots of different things in here, and I'm really looking forward to getting on with it. Now that the main structure's finished, I'm just starting to tidy up the perimeter. So on this edge here, because the polytunnel is slightly raised, I'm going to, once I've dug the rest of this ground nearest to the camera, I'm going to put a slab on edge, which will be half buried right up against the polytunnel, to give it an extra level of protection. At the back here, the path is a higher level than the base of the polytunnel. So what I've done, I've put a slab on edge, and this ground gradient reduces down from the top of the polytunnel by the wooden pole that you can see all the way through. The canes here are just simply to protect and stop the weight of the slabs going against the plastic. The slabs are, particularly at the far end, are mainly buried, so there's not an awful lot of load on the canes. Just it gives that extra level of protection, and just gives a really neat finish to the edge of my allotment, because this is a public path. This is where all the allotment holders will walk up and down. And then I'm just going to infill here on this side, just to cover just over the plastic, but not too high. So as you can see behind me, I've now got a nearly complete polyhouse that I'm hoping is going to last me for many years. So I'm hoping that you've picked up a number of things that you might find interesting or useful if you decide to either replace your existing polytunnel or polyhouse or greenhouse, or you decide to build from new. So if you like the video, don't forget to give it the thumbs up, and if you want to subscribe to my channel for future videos, then please press the subscribe button for videos on how to sow and grow fruit and veg, and a couple of recipe ideas. So if you found the video useful, then just let me know in the comments below, and let me know if you're building or maybe amending or adjusting your polytunnel or polyhouse, and maybe what techniques that you might be using that might be different from mine. So hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.